G'day, it's Joy, and this is the story of how I took my power back after the doctors gave up on me when the drunk driver hit me. I spent a couple of years going to every kind of specialist known to man, seeing 2 or 3 a week. They passed me around like a fascinating experiment, but nobody could figure out what was going on because the brain injuries were so interesting. I remember the exact moment that I said, no, this is enough. The last specialist I saw, without telling me what he was going to do, hooked me up and gave me electric shock treatment. And that was it. That was it for me. That was when I knew. No more. And I saw a psychiatrist, and they recommended that I take up basket weaving so that when I'm a vegetable at 30, I can still be a contributing member of society. So that was actually quite helpful because I got to tell him what I thought of him and his profession, and before I walked out and never saw another one of those people again. I had to give up my job, of course, because any time I went into stress, I would have about 3 minutes before I blacked out. And I had a very stressful job, but I loved my work. I was my work. It was everything. I was so good at making money and creating empires, and I wasn't able to do any of that anymore. And that left me with, who am I now? And I was walking home with this in my mind, and all of a sudden I felt it come on again, and I knew I had about 3 minutes, and I was 5 minutes from home, just 5 minutes from home, and I couldn't make it. And I made it into this hotel, and I tried to get to the bathroom, and the next thing I know, I'm waking up at the bottom of the stairs with my clothes all in disarray from the fall, and people thinking I'm drunk. I didn't leave the house again for a long time after that. And my world got smaller and smaller until one day I found myself in the wardrobe, not wanting to leave that. And that was the moment I knew, I got to do something. And so I tried to kill myself because I still hadn't learned that God has other plans for me and I don't get to opt out. So I thought, well, that leaves me with killing the person that I am, because the person that I am can't live in the body that I've inherited. I've got all these dreams and no way of fulfilling them. So my husband and I moved from our gorgeous wee flat in Elizabeth Bay in Sydney, and I left everything of that life behind me, and we moved to the outskirts of a tiny town of about 300 people called Bemboka, and we took over a handmade paper mill. And in that very different environment, I broke myself down, and I built myself up again from scratch. This was when I dove into the what will I take to God as the sum total of what I did, and started with the foundation of I make each life that I touch more joyful. And then I got to have a look at, okay, so who am I in this body? Which is a bit of an interesting question. I discovered that a lot of the thoughts in my head weren't mine, but had been placed there by other people, and I wonder if you've noticed the same thing. I also noticed that there was quite a few things I didn't really like about myself, and I made a list of those because I figured if I'm going to be creating a new me, I might as well create one I really like and don't have any issues with, So top of the list was not always truthful. The truth had become a slippery thing, and I didn't like that about myself at all. So I wrote down the exact opposite. I always tell the truth. And I did that for all of the things that I didn't like and all of the things I wanted to replace it with. And I heard that if you do anything for a month, that's the habit and it will change. So I made myself, in my usual extremist way, every time I told a lie, I would I would stop and I would go, I'm sorry, that's not true. Please let me say that again. And I would say what was true. And it was really hard and it really worked. Because after about a month, I could no longer say a lie. I just hardwired myself to be what I wanted to be. And I did that with everything on my list until I had a foundation of somebody that I liked and admired. You just can't underestimate the importance of that. And then I looked around and I thought, there's a lot of traits that I like and admire and I don't have. So I got into the habit of looking around and going, okay, who is doing what I want? And I would find out who was modelling that trait, and I would go and I would learn from them until I too had that trait. And here is what I learned after all of this, my darling. I learned that nothing about us is set in concrete. Remember, I'm doing this with massive brain injuries and increasingly limited access to my frontal lobes. So, what's your excuse? I'm still working all the time with my brain and with evolving into the next grandest version of myself. Because that story, that most interesting challenge was the foundation for everything I am now, which is all about moving into the next grandest version of me. It's so fun. It takes a lot of pressure off, and I highly recommend it. So that is the story of what I did after the doctors gave up on me and before I became a holistic health practitioner. But that's another story for another time. I hope you found this one helpful. Thanks for listening.